School District 13, Board of Education Special Work Session Notice, December 9th, 2024 at 6:32. Order, all rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? John, second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. All right, 2026 swing space discussion. Thank you all for coming tonight. First, want to thank admin for all your work past few weeks working on this presentation of the plans that we have here tonight for the board. We're going to hear from the administration. Once they have gone through their presentation, we're going to open it up for any questions from the board. And I just want to remind everyone, we're not voting on anything tonight. We will have an extensive discussion and vote on Wednesday on the topics tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Lindsay. We appreciate the opportunity to share some additional thoughts, insights, planning ideas related to how to best serve children in grades 4 and 5 when we start the construction for the memorial renovation and expansion project. You all have hard copies of the slide presentation that we'll be sharing. And as Lindsay said, I think it'll work best if we can get through these slides. And if you could maybe take notes and hold your questions to the end, I think that would be great. I'm going to begin by reviewing some key information related to the project timeline and then unpack our original proposal along with 3 alternative proposals that were suggested shortly after the November referendum passed, some of them suggested by people in the audience. Thank you all for coming out. Since mobile classrooms will be involved in these proposal comparisons, we believe it's important to discuss any associated costs, and then some of our principles, and I will share some more details about how we recommend proceeding before we get to our Q&A and discussions. So just as a reminder, our project anticipated construction starting date is July of 2025. And that's provided that our state reimbursement application is approved, which we do anticipate. And we have already begun drafting RFP and RFQ documents to initiate the process of selecting architects and construction management. And these RFP and RFQ documents, you may recall, must specify our plans for the swing space in addition to all the other details of the project. Now, I know we've been asked to delay the start of the project by some individuals, and that's certainly an option. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that we do anticipate a 6% escalation in construction costs, which, as you can see on the slide, translates to roughly $4.5 million for the memorial project. So again, none of us has a crystal ball. None of us can say for sure that that would be the number, but that is the best number we have to operate under currently. And if a 1-year delay actually resulted in such an increase, we would have 2 options, neither of which I think would be favorable. One would be to reduce the project scope by that amount. The other would to go back to the voters of Durham and Middlefield through another referendum to ask for additional funding. And so with that in mind, I highly recommend that we adhere to our proposed timeline and to keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this presentation. So I want to start briefly, just as a reminder, to look at our original proposal and also the 3 alternatives that were suggested for consideration. For each proposal, I'm going to start with the benefits and then also talk about challenges. All of them have benefits, all of them have challenges. And so the original proposal, as you'll see in the slide, has Lyman serving grades 2 to 4, Strong serving grades 5 to 8. I think we all know that, but I think it's important to just repeat that. No impact to Brewster or to the high school. I think it's also important to know that this original proposal is what was in the bonding that went to the voters. And again, I think that's also something to keep in mind. So the three alternatives, I felt for the need in this presentation to give them letters just for our discussion. No one else came up with these letters. These are mine, but these are what kind of came our way. So what I'm going to call alternative A, alternative to the original proposal, which some have suggested, is to keep pre-K to 1 being served at Brewster, keep strong serving grades 6 to 8, and have grades 2 through 5 at Lyman. That was one suggestion that came, and so we wanted to kind of analyze that as an alternative. What we're calling B would have second grade at Brewster along with the first grade, the kindergarten, and the pre-K. It would have grades 3 through 5 at Lyman, and again, have strong hosting grades 6 through 8 as it currently does. And then alternative C would be to use the Durham Community Center, also known as Corn School, to house grades 5, and others have suggested grades 4 and 5. So I'm going to start with alternative C, which again suggests serving grades 5 or 4 and 5 at the community center. So in terms of benefits, one of the clear ones is that this proposal would maintain our current operations at Strong. They would continue to be a 6th, 7th, and 8th school. And this also, as all of the options and alternatives do, would keep entire grade levels together across the district as they are currently configured. Just as an aside, one of the reasons we went to the proposal we did was that the architect's original proposal was going to split a grade level, and we felt like that didn't make sense now that we have all of our grade levels together and feel like that is a good practice. So so we've got these kind of promising thoughts of the configuration if we could actually get into the community center, but there are quite a few of significant challenges that would be inherent to leasing space in that multi-use facility. And just to kind of name these, I would start with the quality of educational programming, which we feel like would be very challenging for us to provide in that setting. Safety and security, when you own and operate your own buildings, as we currently do, you have a much greater control over that safety and security element. When you're leasing from somebody else, you're kind of dependent on that. And so that would be a challenge. Doesn't mean we couldn't do it. It just would be a challenge. But I think probably the largest one relates back to one of my earlier slides. There would be so many moving parts and pieces to this one that I don't think we could adequately plan for it for next fall and stay on the current timeline with our construction. Something else I think that's important that I don't think got brought up, at least in any of the conversations I've had, and it may not matter to people, but it does matter to me. If we send 5th graders to the community center, and this will come up in some other alternatives as well, they'd only be there for 1 year. And so overall in their educational experience, this is adding the number of school transitions for those children. And I think that's something that I view personally as a negative as an educator. So others may not agree, and I'm not saying you have to. So that's the community center. Now, if we go to alternative B, again, this is Brewster pre-K to 2, Lyman 3 to 5, and Strong 6 to 8. This also maintains our current operations at Strong, and we see that as a benefit and keeps the grade levels consistent across the district. The thing that alternative B gives us that alternative C did not, which I think has been articulated as being important to folks, is it would allow the grade 5 to be located with grades 3 and 4 in a more kind of traditional upper elementary configuration. Now, the challenges with B, again, like C, it increases the number of school transitions, because if you think about it, these children which are currently being served as 4th graders at Memorial would be sent to Lyman just for 1 year for grade 5. and then be sent to the middle school as sixth graders under this option. We also have some challenges on Lyman's campus under this option in terms of related arts and intervention space. And I'll talk about them when we get to the original proposal, because we have the same ones with that one, along with needing additional parking. And under that configuration, we wouldn't easily be able to have grade levels all together in that building. Just so I'm clear, the whole grade level would be at the building, but in terms of their location within the building, that would be challenging under option B. And that I still think is more doable. However, the challenges at Brewster and alternative B are much more significant, as we would need to add 4 mobile classrooms. And the learners, as we talked about, I think at the last meeting, would have reduced access to the cafeteria for PE due to the additional lunch demands on that space. With the additional children, other related art spaces would also be more difficult to schedule. And this campus, this will be a common theme, would need additional parking under this alternative. Also, in addition to just the rising 5th grade, under this alternative, the number of school transitions would also increase for children attending Brewster. And when we get to the discussion, we can kind of unpack that if you want about how that would happen. And again, I think that's just an important factor for us to consider in all of this. So when we move to alternative A, that has the advantage that it doesn't impact Brewster or Strong. Everything happens there on Lyman. If you think about it, we just take every grade level that's currently housed at Memorial and relocate it to the John Lyman campus. And this also has the benefit of allowing those 5th graders, because I know that's a lot of input that we got on that, to be served in a more traditional elementary setting. So this would also increase the transitions. Again, I've said that on every option, because again, like the previous option, the 4th graders that are currently at Memorial under this option would go to Lyman as 5th graders for 1 year and then go on to the middle school. This alternative would also require the addition of 6 mobile classrooms to the Lyman campus. And it would also impact the availability of related arts and intervention spaces, again, because we'd have 4 full grade levels operating on that campus. Doesn't mean we can't do it. It would just be a challenge. And the significant increase in parking would have to be allotted under that alternative A. So now thinking about the original proposal, what we see as benefits to the original proposal was, 1, keeping all the grade levels together. I mentioned that together, and also minimizing the number of school transitions. So this is where the original proposal does contrast with A, B, and C in terms of those school transitions. We also believe, and I think I said this at the last meeting, and we did from the get-go, that the existing capacity at Strong Middle School and Lyman are better served to take on an additional grade level of children when we compare that to Brewster. And it's also important to note that, and I mentioned this before, but it's repeating that it was this proposal that we factored into the bonding proposal that went to the voters for approval last month. However, this proposal has its own challenges too. And I think at Lyman, the challenges would be that related arts and intervention space would be, again, not impossible to do, but it'd be tight, and it would be challenging to do that the way that we think is best for children. We couldn't guarantee that each grade level was together, and we would need additional parking. And then, of course, at Strong, as has been shared by lots of people, probably the most salient point that we've heard from people is that second bullet on there. And that is not being able to provide an elementary experience that people would feel for the 5th grade would be lacking. But in addition to that, this original proposal would have the bus routes being shared. So basically 5 through 12 on the same bus routes, which some people really have taken exception with. And also, we have some related art space challenges at Strong with 4 grade levels, just like we would at the other schools that I mentioned. So next, I think it's important to just briefly talk about the cost of mobile classrooms. This is not a precise figure. Mobiles come in different shapes and sizes, but our best estimate in doing the research is that we would probably get more bang for our buck if we did the mobile units that actually have 2 classrooms in them. You can buy them separately, but it's kind of less efficient to buy them as individuals. So we'd be looking at $250,000. And so you saw with some of those alternatives with A and B, the need to add mobiles, and that cost would need to be factored in. We didn't factor those costs into the bonding proposal, but we are allowed to do this if this is what we decide to do. However, it's important to note that the cost of the mobiles doesn't automatically guarantee that we will get state reimbursement for this. Somebody at the state has to make that determination whether they believe that we actually need those mobiles based on kind of our existing capacity and other factors. So we may qualify for it, but we may not. So if we end up going with one of those alternatives, we would have to at least go into it knowing that it's possible that locally we would have to bear the entire amount of the project. And that's something else that I think is important to consider. So with all of that, we as a team, and again, I want to thank the folks that are here tonight from our leadership team, along with others who weren't able to be here tonight. We looked at all of these alternatives. We went through all these kind of pros and cons, like I just did. It took a lot longer than I just did it. I tried to make this kind of brief and to the point. And we come back to you with some modifications to the original proposal. And this is what we think we should do. But again, you'll have to make that decision, and we're going to support whatever you do in this space. One of the things we are going to propose, in spite of what I just said about cost, is add a mobile with 2 classrooms to the Lyman campus. And under this modification, that would allow the grade levels to be located together. And you're going to see this in a little more detail from Tom in a minute here on a map, so you can kind of see that. And also with that additional mobile, that one investment, the related arts spaces become a lot more manageable, even with that extra grade level added to that campus. And whoops, I got ahead of myself here. For Strong, we recommend a number of things. And again, Cheryl is here and she's going to go over some of those highlights. But the big ones that I wanted to share with you all is that we would propose a separate start and end time for Strong as a 5 to 8 school, different than the high school, and also completely separate buses and bus routes. We've heard that loud and clear that being on buses with those 9th to 12th graders is less than ideal. And we think this is a reasonable modification to that original proposal. And probably most significantly is that we've adjusted the proposed floor plan for this 5 to 8 school to create a grade 5 wing, as Cheryl will unpack here shortly, that we feel like we can keep the children separate for the majority of the day from the older children, which was a major concern that we heard from a lot of folks. So with that, I am now going to turn things over to Tom, and I am going to put the Lyman floor plan up there. I know for those in the audience, you probably can't read that. The type is very small, but Tom's going to speak to a lot of it. And if you've been to Lyman, you can probably visualize quite a bit of this. So Tom, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. Thank you for having us here tonight. So just, I'm going to talk a little bit about the floor plan that you see and a couple of points around it. Just a couple of caveats related to that. So on the map, pretty much where you see red would be location changes that are different from the current school year. So that could be within the building, potentially, or obviously with the addition of 4th grade, who are not currently at Lyman, from outside our building. So you can see kind of a general concept of what that would look like. I also would just for the purpose of this map, point out that this kind of is reflective of our anticipation that there would be 5 sections at each grade level. And that's based on our current enrollment figures, current enrollment numbers for this year, and meeting Board of Education class size targets. So that's reflected in the map as well.
Tom, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yes.
You're talking this way. I don't know if people can hear on the other side.
We're
Can
just
you all
confused
hear?
if the information's different.
You can hear.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
So just in terms of the floor plan itself, we would be looking at one of the benefits with the addition of the portable unit, again, 1 unit with 2 classroom spaces, would be having grade levels in the vicinity of one another. And this would be especially pertinent for 4th grade, based on our existing portable units that would be refurbished under this plan. So you can see kind of where those additional portables, kind of the bottom left of the map, and what that would look like in terms of that 4th grade hub. And that is consistent with what we have in terms of 3rd and 2nd grade within the building. Again, the main building is essentially 1 hallway, but the grade levels are located kind of as hubs, if you will. The other benefit is the flexibility that would come with other instructional spaces, particularly intervention, but that could include special education and other small group service providers. And again, having that flexibility, as Doug suggested, we feel will be beneficial educationally for our learners, and also for our teachers and staff in delivering that instruction to our kids. In terms of schedules, with the grades 2, 3, and 4 configuration, my anticipation is that those schedules will be very similar to what they are presently. Obviously with the addition of 4th grade, but I would expect that those will look very similar to what our 2nd and 3rd grade schedules look like, both in terms of the classroom components and related arts. Obviously, there would be more kids for lunch and recess, so we'd have additional lunch and recess waves, most likely organized by grade level, but scheduled in a way that, staggered, I should say, in a way that those waves are contiguous, meaning your lunch and recess wave would follow. So lunch followed immediately by recess, or recess followed by immediately by lunch, depending on what that schedule looks like, for those particular classes. And then anticipating, and expecting to have the same start and end times as we currently do, which is 8:50 to 3:20. And that is the same as we've had for many years at Lyman, and the same as Brewster School as well. And then lastly, in terms of transportation, would not anticipate any changes to transportation other than the addition of 4th grade riders on our buses. But in terms of the mechanics of transportation, arrival, and dismissal, I'd expect that would be basically the same as it is currently.
Sure. We'll go to Cheryl.
Okay. I'm not usually known for being soft, so if you can't hear me, let me know. So when you look at the map, Strong School is pretty much a T shape. If you look to the bottom left, that is currently where our 6th grade class is. We would be putting our 5th grade classes there. We have more classroom space there. So primarily, this would be their hub where they spend the majority of the day. And it's not clear in the map, but there is a staircase that brings them right downstairs into the cafeteria. The other thing, if you look, so you leave the 5th grade, there's 2 laboratory facilities there. As they come out to the main hallway, we go all the way to the end, and that is where we would put the 6th grade, because they would only need 4 classes. One of the issues that we talked about with this, which we think we can overcome, is that we would need to take one of the 6th grade classrooms and make it more appropriate for a science center. So we would add things in for the science teacher. Now, when you come back to the center of the main hallway, right across from the hallway, and again, changes are in red. You see fifth grade RA, and that would be fifth grade related arts. Spent a lot of time trying to think about how we can not have students on a cart. And there will be times that they can go in the other related arts rooms. But for when they cannot, this would allow, we've spoken, if we could have a related arts teacher come to Strong, say the art teacher comes on Monday. And then this is their designated space. We would have teachers or walking them to and from the related arts room. Now, this is currently the girls' locker room, which does not get used at all during the day. And the benefit of changing this along with the other one that says intervention and office space is that, because that's the boys' locker room that we would use. In between, you see T, and that's for laboratory facilities. And I think that's really important because we're adding 100 students. We want to make sure we have adequate facilities there. And then as we go down that hallway there, further is the seventh grade hallway. The only change there would be we have a common area and they would put up a wall to make a classroom there as well. When we, the other thing I just skipped that I wanted to talk about was in the gym area, because we do have a full-size gym. In the event that we had two PE classes going at the same time, we could purchase a divider that will divide the gym in halfway. I do know that our teachers tend to, if the weather's nice, they bring them outside, but that's not always feasible. When we go downstairs, now we look and we will be taking our school-based health center and taking part of the faculty room to put that in there. That too is in red. And then we would be using the two in the corner there, world language classrooms, and those are for grades 6 through 8. So fifth graders would not be there. A few other things we would propose is that we would change our school hours to mirror what Memorial currently does, which is 8 to 2:30. So that we're not as early as we have been. And we would keep fifth grade on the same schedule or the same model of instruction as Memorial with the one teacher, one core area teacher. Fifth grade would also have its own lunch wave followed by half an hour recess. Lunch would start at 11. And importantly, we would have our own wave of transportation. So we would just have 5 through 8 on the buses. And that is what we are proposing for Strong.
So at this point, and I know we went pretty fast and it was a lot of detail, but we thought it would be good to get all that information out and then turn it back over to you all for any questions or any discussion you want to have.
You want to start by school or do you want to start by plan? It's easiest for you. Or questions, or you just want to take them from
Just take them wherever they come from.
So this 5th through 8th at Strong is not using any modules?
No.
Okay, and or modulars of the 5th RA I'm confused about. So I see like there's still a music room, there's still an art room. So if they were gonna go to art, they wouldn't go to Amy's room for art, they would go.
We wouldn't, her room is already filled with
Oh,
students.
so
She's got
other
a full
students would be
schedule.
having art and then, so she would just have to bring her supplies
No,
there.
whomever the art teacher
Oh, so
is, we would
that's-
need related arts, the
Got
art
it.
teacher to come to Strong.
Okay,
Say they came on Monday, they would be in that related arts room. for the
it's like
whole
while
day.
2 things are going on.
Yeah.
And
So we
it-
could have
yeah,
it shared.
That's a shared position between two schools.
Yeah, and it's possible more that the art room could be open.
Yes.
We just can't
It's just
promise
that
that at
extra
this
space.
point, and
Okay.
so that's why Cheryl and Fitz put in that extra room.
Got it.
And then also, I think, that teacher only comes 1 day a week. The only other option would be to push into the regular teacher's classroom, and that's kind of disruptive to the regular
Yeah,
teacher, and
yeah.
we prefer not to do that.
I had a question about the community center. You listed the challenges, but have you discussed this at all and talked to the first selectman
I have.
to get it?
I have,
Their
yeah,
feedback.
we met last week and he was aware that these conversations were going on. And of course, he wants to be supportive in any way that he can. And I think one of the things that's important, and again, I don't want to speak for him, but we had a good conversation is that I believe the town of Durham would view the use of that facility differently in perhaps more of kind of an unanticipated emergency situation. Say, for example, a roof collapsed in one of our schools, or we had a fire, or just unusable for an extended period of time. I think in that circumstance, he believes the town would probably maybe give up the whole facility and just say, whatever you guys need. And that even the people that are currently using it would kind of understand that. In the present circumstance, it's a multi-use facility. It has people that are anchored there. And so the option that we discussed would be us leasing space in there and being kind of like a co-user with the other current users. And that is where the challenges come from my perspective. I don't want to say that was his challenges. I would say as we kind of talked through that, it was like, well, how would that work? And how would that work? And so, for example, he started by saying, how many classrooms would you need? And I said, well, if it was 5th grade, we would need 5 classrooms for the regular classrooms, but then we would also need space for special education. And we would need room for intervention, and we would need room for related arts. And we'd have to be able to do lunch. And we'd have to have a schedule for pickup and drop off. And so, I think we could make all of that work, but I don't think we could make it work and stay on this timeline, because the other options that we are using are utilizing facilities that we own and control. And so we can very quickly make these changes and guarantee that they would happen in a certain way. When you're dealing with an external entity, all of those things would have to be worked out with that entity. So that's why I say it would be a challenge. It could still be done.
I'm wondering, even with a different timeline, you would still, let's say you were still proposing to use Corn School, you'd be talking about at least 2 years of consistent use, not just
Correct.
a short term. So you would still run into the same issues with other uses that are there.
Without question.
So
And
timeline isn't really as much of it. It's the use that.
well,
that's the issue.
I think it's both. I mentioned the timeline simply because of that earlier slide with the cost increases. And I just feel like if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do. But I just can't recommend that, given the dollar amounts that we're talking on this. I would say the other alternatives would be more viable financially than that one because of the delay. But also, you mentioned those challenges. Yeah, we can't speak as confidently to how all of those things would work. They haven't really been set up to do this for us. Again, it was a school at one point, so it probably could work.
It's not a school now.
Right, it's not a school now, it's a community center now.
Senior center, yeah.
Cheryl, besides the dividers in the gym, are there any other thing that you think would be beneficial if we put the 5th grade there?
Well, there's always things that would be beneficial. I think we talked a little bit about, amongst ourselves about recess equipment. Because I know that's a concern of some of the parents. And we've talked about, we do have a Gaga pit that we have funds for that we're going to purchase. We might be able to take the one from Memorial, but I'm not sure. And we're also even looking at just taking the swing set that they have over there, and if we can, transferring it to Strong School. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my head, and that's just other things, the science room as well. I would want that room to be fitted so that the teacher could do her labs the way they should be done.
Does that give recess for 5th, just 5th, or does that give recess for 5th through 8th within the schedule?
It gives a 30-minute recess for 5th. 6 through 8 stays with the 10 to 12-minute recess, which is plenty for them.
I have a question for both Cheryl and Tom. Logistically, in the space you have with a modified original, more students, is our kitchen facilities able to handle it? Do we need to rent equipment and things? I know it's certainly not gonna be comfortable, but did you have any speaking with Mark Basil about, are we able to staff it? Do we have the equipment to do it for, you said about 100 more students perhaps? At each grade level, and that's certainly a consideration.
I can speak to that. Yes, I did. I spoke extensively with Mark Basil about it. We've got the staff members from Memorial that we can bring over and help with staggered shifts. And then also, he did feel we might need a new oven at Strong, which, right, that would remain at Strong. That would be part of the swing space. And so that would be something that we would purchase. But in terms of Lyman, he said that it can be done fine.
We have any idea on the availability of any of the mobiles?
Mobiles, 1 or 2 mobiles. Not hard to get hands on. More than that could be difficult to get them. What happens is they don't just build mobiles a lot of times, they take them back because you lease them, you don't want to buy them. And they refurbish them and then they hand them back out to someone else who needs them. So you may not be able to get easily a number of mobiles. 1, likely you'll be able to get it for summer of 2025.
When we get our grant, will we know if that's feasible?
As far as reimbursement, you mean?
Yeah.
So they have to review all the expenditures, so it's not quick. So they would then tell us, they'd look at the space and everything. So once they give you sort of an approval to move forward, it doesn't mean everything's done. You have to go under plan review and expense review. There's a lot involved. So at some point they could say, we don't really think you need these portables because you have space. But I also think 1 portable as opposed to a number is a more reasonable ask of the state. So they may say, okay, 1 might be worth it.
And that includes the renovation of the ones that are there, right?
Yes.
And that was in our original grant application.
Mhm.
And the 1 portable. Also. Was that in the original grant?
So the 1 portable we're talking about at Lyman,
Yeah.
that's not in the grant, in the bonding application. There is contingency in there. Things kind of happen, so it can be absorbed by the contingency. That would just reduce the contingency for other things.
And that's usually based on square footage and current class sizes too. So the one mobile, that puts us in that range where it's the likelihood of the reimbursement is there, right?
I would hope so.
So seeing how this is just a temporary plan, like it's really, I mean, some of these plans have us putting in science room stuff and walls. And it's really just for 2 years. So I'm thinking like we want to do as little as possible so that we're not like doing it for, for no reason after 2 years. So, and then the other plans are using 4 mobile classrooms and then 6. So I'm just wondering, after it's all said and done, what is the most cost-effective plan out of all these 3 plans?
Well, when we ran the numbers, and that was the original proposal of the 5th grade at Strong with no portables and the 4th grade at Lyman, no portables.
Do we have an estimate on what the work at Strong would be? I know that a lot of it's, if not all of it's, going to be reimbursed, but.
Yeah, I am sure it's in don't have that broken out right now.
Jen, I'd like to ask you, because I know you were a counselor. What are your thoughts on the social and emotional aspects of having 5th graders with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders?
There's no research on, saying that there's any detriment to having a 5th grade in middle school. I think that in this proposed model, what's nice is that it limits the current 4th grade, the upcoming 5th graders. It limits the transitions. If we did any of the other options, they would be having at least 3 transitions. And so I think that would be more difficult for the students and the teachers than having kids go up to Strong for 5th grade and being in their community. You're on a separate space in an elementary school model with one teacher for the classes, so. But there's no real research that there would be a problem.
Well, and along those lines, and I'm not sure who would answer this, are there any other schools in Connecticut, any other school districts that have middle schools with fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, or are we just
Right.
doing something that's kind of unique?
No, there's several.
No, yeah, if I may, the model of a K through 8, like almost every single Hartford school is K-8. So there's plenty of schools out there, whether regardless of district size, who have 5th grade in the same building as 8th grade. They, however, were built to like, I'm certainly not discounting concerns because I have a couple as well. But in and of itself, it's not a bad practice. It's all in the implementation that where the rubber meets the road is what we have to focus on.
Like it came from heaven.
You do miss her, don't you?
See, just one comment on that. Old Saybrook has a grade 4 through 8 structure, and they've had that for about 25 years. So, you know, there's a school district that's fairly local that's had this grading configuration for quite some time.
Well, I also know, having taught in Adam Killingworth, that when I originally went into the middle school, it was 7th and 8th grade, and they built a brand new middle school in Killingworth. And it was a 5, 6, 7, 8 school, and now I believe they have 4th graders in there as well. So, and it's just the way it's designed, that the students, they may all come in together, but then they're all separated, because I actually taught in that building as well.
And
So,
Haddam, sorry, because Haddam has that too.
Haddam
Or three,
Killingworth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually 23 5 through 8 middle schools in the state of Connecticut.
If we put 5th grade at Lyman and added 6 more classrooms, how would that work with the current lunch, recess, related arts?
You know, the related arts piece is a little bit more, you know, there'd be more of it. You know, obviously presumably more related arts teaching, so, you know, would have to give some exploration to like the space. I think the mechanics of the schedule, you know, intuitively would work pretty similarly to what we have in place now. You know, in terms of lunch and recess ways, for instance, you know, to do the staggered thing that I was talking about, you would need 4 blocks. So, you know, that, you know, would be doable. Obviously, you know, there would be a much higher volume of people on campus, you know, students as well as staff, you know, because you would be incorporating 4th and 5th grade leaders, and then, you know, all the, you know, related arts, intervention, special education and so forth, you know, support staff. But I think like the overall, you know, conceptual design would probably be fairly similar. And with 6 portables, I think the kind of design thinking to some degree or another would be fairly similar to, you know, what, you know, this map looks like. Just obviously more classroom spaces, because, you know, of those 6 portables, you know, presumably you would be, you know, filling them with 5th grade and a little bit of 4th, you know, as I think about it. So,
And probably if that's the way we went, we want to get with the architect to even decide the proper location of those. I don't think it would just be assumed that we would just build out to the current mobile kind of setup. We might, because you also have to consider parking at that point and traffic flow and safety and security and all of those things. And they might have a more favorable location for those additional ones.
Yeah, all these proposals include security around portables.
Oh, yeah. So at Lyman, there's already a security fence around the existing portables, so that's in theory.
Kim, does the 250 for the mobiles, does that also include the site improvements and town approvals and, you know?
It's the rental of the unit and the
Just the replacement
site
stuff.
And
improvement.
placement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Land approvals, you know, probably there's something in there for that. Yeah. But those aren't a heavy lift usually.
Wait, I know you said that this keeps all of the class sizes at our max or around below the max. What do we currently have with this configuration? So we have 5 second grades, 5 third grades, 5 fourth grades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fifth grades, but only 4 sixth grades.
Correct.
All right, so what do you have it on offhand? Like, what would class numbers be in each of those grades? With this, with 2 through 4 at Lyman and 5 through 8 at Strong? What would our class numbers
Do
be?
you have that, Kim?
So, so you're asking it strong?
No, well, I just am wondering, with this configuration, with 2nd through 4th at Lyman and 5th through 8th at Strong, what are our class numbers, class sizes looking like with this current plan now?
I think, yeah, I'd have to have them.
So each grade level is roughly 100 students, give or take. The only one that's larger right now is the current 6th grade. They're at 117. They're kind of the outliers for that. So, usually well, I don't want to speak about elementary, but in 6th grade, we need 4 teachers because they're not with the same teacher all day. So they're divided by their academics that way.
But how many are in there at a time then?
106 fifth graders.
103.
And 103.
So it'd be about roughly 25.
And that's
It
been-
doesn't
that's
end up
been the
being that
historical
many.
Staffing.
For 6.
For 6th grade, yeah.
Okay.
And
And
we,
what about?
and we added that one this year because we had that bubble class,
Yeah.
that large 6th grade.
It doesn't end up being the full 25 or 26 because the students, we separate them out, so they might be in a related.
Okay. And then that gives all of the elementary is
Yeah,
around
and the-
20. Right.
Yeah, and the current
So
first
I
grade
can
is,
speak to, with 2nd grade, we currently have 6 sections of 2nd
Right,
grade
that's-
now.
Yeah.
We're anticipating right now, there are, I believe, 93
93
first graders. So,
Okay.
the class size target for
You
2nd
don't
grade
need
is
six.
20.
Okay.
So we'd be looking at classes of 18 and 19 in 2nd grade based on the current enrollment.
But now
So
in
that's,
3rd grade.
so that's not, that really has nothing to do with swing space. That is based on what the enrollment numbers are currently for 1st grade. In terms of the 2nd grade piece of it.
It's the same number of classrooms in this swing space as there are now.
Okay.
Per
But if
grade-
we have
per
6 second grades and we only
per-
have
per
5 third
grade,
grades.
so 4th graders
For
go
next
to
year.
5th.
No, there's currently 6 2nd grade sections,
Okay.
right? So there would be 5 2nd grade sections next year based on the current 1st grade enrollment.
But then so would we need 6 third grade classes for next year? Because.
No.
No, because the
Class
class size targets in 3rd grade are not the same as 2nd grade. So the class size targets in 3rd grade are 22. So we'd be looking at classes of 20 and 21.
We've
for-
historically gone from.
Which is
6 to
typical,
5.
which is what they are currently this year, for 3rd grade.
Seems to be some contention on that. Is that all accurate?
That's accurate. I was just gonna say, that's why the thought of the
That's a question.
addition,
I mean, we hear a lot of rumbling going on. I just want to make
No,
sure it's accurate.
the addition of the mobile, the portable, that kind of was part of, you know, because that gives us growing room.
Okay.
Too, if we needed another section.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
The class size targets for kindergarten, 1st through 18, 2nd 20, 3rd 22, 4th 20 through 24, 5th 21 to 25. 6th same 21 to 25, 7th 22 to 26.
Can you say second and third again? I'm sorry.
2nd 20, 3rd 22.
Max.
Yep, well, it's class size targets, yeah,
Yeah.
in our policy.
Yes.
Yeah, in strong, the fifth grade. We have enough desks and things like that, or they have to be. Bought in new or bought new ones.
He's asking, would we have enough desks for the fifth graders?
I would take some from Memorial to make sure that we have enough desks. I believe we do, but I'm not 100% sure, so I would definitely take them.
And if we're gonna get new equipment in Memorial when it's rebuilt, so that those would not go back, that would. Say,
Right, so to your point, basically anything at Memorial that would be needed at Strong or at Lyman, we would want to take, because everything else would probably get like surplus.
in addition to the science at Wilmer. Is there an opportunity to put some science outside? In any of the areas around?
I can't say that I've given a lot of thought to that, but there,
I
I mean,
have, so I. just
I know.
was Asking if we could,
things are always an option.
yeah,
I'm not sure where you mean outside on the property
well, I just.
or
I
like
just-
Allenbrook, because we've thought about Allenbrook for potentially even recess for our students.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we've lost some outside education throughout the district, but it just seems like we ought to put some more back in where we can. And if there are some kind of equipment that could be used, as maybe we can find eligibility for it or put it in the budget.
I know the problem with Allenbrook is that it's still a public, it's far and it's still a public place. I mean, so you really can't guarantee that the kids are not being exposed
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, you
The
can't,
public.
you can't make people leave out.
No, I mean, there could be other families there, there could be just
Was
people
one
hanging
of
out
many
there.
different thoughts
Right,
that
yeah,
we
that's
had
only,
to try to-
that's the problem I would have with that.
Yeah.
I think there would have to be definitely something separate. And then also for me, it would have to be a plan, like what would the plan be for the months when there's snow? Because we know from the other schools, like half the time they can't do anything on the ground because it's, you know, they could bring their snow stuff, but what would the plan be for the snow days? Because they still need recess.
Right. So we would do as the elementary school does, or as we do now,
Right.
when it's just a longer period of time. If the weather is okay, even if there's snow, then they stay on the hard top.
Yeah, right.
Where we have basketball and we do have Foursquare. And when the weather's not okay, then we would come in and go in the classrooms and
Okay.
do. I would be reaching out to Tom and Noel to ask them what
Okay.
they do.
Let us not forget, we have a wonderful resource in Middlefield that will be next to Memorial, Wadsworth Falls State Park, and some of my fondest memories of going to Memorial were going back in those woods, and I remember to this day, and it was life-changing. It truly made you experience it. So it's not out of the question to have a short field trip, 10 minutes away. It's a resource that we should use.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think even looking at increasing field trips, if that's the plan that goes forward, just so you're alleviating some of the constant flow in the building, whether that's outdoor or not, you know, could help. I've asked the ones that Linda's asked. Yeah, okay. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I just was thinking that, you know, we can make the experience in any one of these options the most beneficial by adding stuff in the budget, adding stuff, you know, that would help. Anything like that, I think this is only for 2 years, but it's gonna be 2 classes that would spend 4 years if we go to the strong school. And it may be things that we should think about that can enhance their opportunity while they're there. That we could engage as part of this construction activity or part of our budget, and I think. At any of these options, I think we need to think about what are the things that would happen that would make this experience more beneficial for the student. And that can be done either by any capital improvements, like building a science room, things like that. or equipping the art room with more up-to-date films or whatever else necessary, or doing things that would, you know, make the experience more lasting.
Do you have any idea, Cheryl, of what clubs would look like under the 5 through 8 model? After school clubs, would they be separate? Would 5th grade be separate? Would they be incorporated with 5th, 6th grade?
I would see it as incorporated. I can't tell you that there's been a final decision on that. But I don't see why we wouldn't offer, I would want to offer all the clubs that Memorial has that we have and open it up to whomever wishes to join. Because I think that's good opportunity for them to meet and interact not in an academic area, but in a positive way. So that's what I would expect.
So we'd be able to be offering that 5th grade the chance to have more clubs, more departments.
I'm not sure what Memorial has, but I would imagine that we have more. But I would also want to bring the clubs that we have at Memorial over to Strong.
Is there anything else currently at Memorial right now that you could think of that you would definitely want? I mean, like, obviously like the clubs, I'm thinking the music. You know, like everything that's pretty much offered at Memorial would still be offered at Strong.
And more.
And more.
With Memorial, I know Memorial historically used to have access to the musical or play program. This would incorporate Strong to have that for 5th. Would they be able to do the collaboration with the musical?
Which one?
The
The
one
one
at the high
that's
school.
done at the high school level? I think it's. I can't tell you yes, I can't imagine why not. If students are interested in it, why wouldn't they be allowed to join if their parents are on board?
Yeah, we have discussed that they would not be able to access the sports
Correct.
as 5th graders. I don't think that would be wise
That's
anyway.
fair. Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be eligible.
Make it really complicated, Cheryl. If 5th and 6th grade were on a different schedule, a later schedule, and 7th and 8th stayed on the high school schedule. I know that would be a kind of a nightmare to administer, but it would allow the 5th grade to travel on the current buses with little kids. But you would have two schedules at the high. at the
We'd have,
school.
they'd have their own bus route then.
Yeah,
Um,
I know it'd be a nightmare to have everything.
well, I also think from a parenting perspective, it doesn't matter for me, I'm there, you know, one way or the other, but if parents, like when we were 7, 8, we didn't have a lot of siblings. And then we went 6, 8, there's more siblings. Now with 5, 8, I would imagine even more siblings, right? That could pose an issue for parents who, if their child, you know, if their 8th grader is going to get on the bus and be at school for 7, and then their 5th grader is still at home now for another hour, that could pose childcare issues. Or even along the lines of, if they bring their kids, are they going to drop one off at 8 and sit in the parking lot till 7? I mean, you know, for another hour to. I personally don't see that as a feasible option.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that if that's what you guys decide, I wouldn't.
No.
We did kick that around because that had
Yeah.
been suggested and that's not what we're recommending, but
Yeah,
Cheryl's
I
point,
got that.
yeah. I can do it.
Right, if that's what you said, then that's what we do.
So after looking at all these options, as an administration, are you still standing by your original proposal to have 2-4 at Lyman and 5-8 at Strong? You still find that that's the best?
Yes,
proposal?
with the modifications that we went over in those later slides with the addition of the mobile, which isn't a must-have. We just think it's a best practice for the reasons that Tom shared and that I shared. And with the 5-8, with the changes that Cheryl and I talked about with the different buses in the high school, the different time than the high school, the movement to the wing of the building, which was not the original design. The original design from the architect had them more out closer to other children so yeah, that's the recommendation. Yes, the short answer.
So are you also saying that the additional portables at Lyman, you could have done without the additional portables, it just wouldn't been?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and
So that's
again,
okay.
when you go back and look at the slides, when I talked about the challenges of the original. It talked about we couldn't keep all the grade levels together and the related arts would be more challenging, so that's where. Under Tom's guidance, we kind of looked at with that one mobile, we could make that 2 to 4 campus so much more. We just think enhanced and closer to what we're currently providing in terms of what. Children and adults kind of expect, but yes, in a pinch, if you all didn't feel like that was. That we made that argument or that it was worth the 250. We can go ahead and implement it without that mobile. And Tom could even speak specifically to what that might look like. I think 4th grade would be inside the building, closer to second and third, and
in
would
that
kind of not.
scenario, things are obviously, tighter. With the refurbished portables, there's 4 of them, so, presumably the 4 4th grades are there, and one of the 4th grade classes would be in the main trunk of the building, obviously. You certainly have, with the 4th grade, or any grade level coming to Lyman, there's gonna be more staff. So, we'd be much more creative in our use of all of our existing spaces, what I call the non-classroom instructional spaces, intervention, potentially making use of some of our space in the library if we needed to. I'd also say, in terms of related arts, there's definitely more potential for, more related arts classes, pushing into classrooms, on a cart, if you will, is kind of the terminology. So, so the overall flow, I think, of the building, would be, for lack of a better term, from, from an educator standpoint, the addition of the portables, we would create, just better instructional continuity and flow within the building, in terms of that overall experience for learners and for staff. But it definitely, like I said, it is doable. Kind of looking at what is possible and what would be more optimal, I guess would be the way I would kind of frame that.
And the improvements to the middle school, many of those would probably be just left and utilized with the rest of the population. So it's not just money that's being expended and then being removed. So it would be an enhancement.
Yeah, I would think, like, for example, those dividers that you talked about in the gym, couldn't you put them to use now if you had them?
Yeah, probably.
So again, to your point, Lucy, that would be something that the grant would support under this temporary relocation, but then when the new memorial would open, Strong would still have use of those dividers for 6th, 7th, and 8th. Yep.
Quick question for Tom. Lyman always had a propensity of a lot of pickups and drop-offs by parents. Has that increased in recent years? And do you foresee any issues in that department? I had for years the privilege of coming every Friday to the assemblies many meetings ago.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it varies a little bit. I'd say on average, we probably have about the same number of pickups, give or take, that we had last year. We have roughly the same number of students.
Is it manageable currently? And do you
Yeah,
foresee any
I'm not going to
issues?
deny that there's, manageable on our end on the campus, certainly there is spillover to the road. That's, I think, all of our campuses truthfully have limitations in terms of, not so much the drop off, because the drop off is a quicker process. But with the pickups, again, it's hard to predict year to year, exactly. We have some families that pick up every day, some that, parents who pick up occasionally. I think overall, given, again, some of the limitations of, the parking in the campus space, it runs relatively smoothly. I have gotten some parent feedback to that effect, which is nice to hear. I don't think there's any perfect system for, parent drop off and pick up in particular. But again, I don't envision it being radically different with the addition of a grade level. I would expect more pickups, but one of our bigger pickup days, when we have an assembly, which is not every Friday, but when we do have assemblies and we have a different pickup process for assembly pickups that kind of eliminates the, for the families that are picking up directly from assembly, eliminates the, getting in line in cars for those folks. So again, high volume is going to take a little bit of time, but really that came out of the pandemic, kind of rethinking our processes. And I would say our overall number of pickups are lower than they were, in 2020 or 2021. So that, yes, but I think overall that those processes will look very much the same as they are now with the addition of a grade.
Do you think it would be possible to maybe start the pickup a little, like a few minutes earlier?
I
so that-
suspect we probably would,
Because a lot of times the people sit there for a while, so like you could even start it so that the flow.
we do
goes.
start it earlier than.
Yeah,
a
like
little
even
bit-
earlier than.
Yeah, we might, and I think that's the,
Yeah, it's a
realistically,
possibility.
so, the end of the day after 3 o'clock is going to be some kind of, 3:05 to 3:15
Yeah.
timeframe is typically wrapping up the day anyway. So, we typically call our pickups a few minutes before, but some of it depends on the volume, and how many we're anticipating, with the goal of being able to load less than 20, generally speaking. So there is some fluidity and flexibility that can be built in there depending on, the number and volume on a given day.
Under the recommendation, does the after-school program still stay at Brewster?
I don't think we've talked about anything different, have we, Kevin? I mean, that's.
No. Right.
And we would still transport, and we have talked that we would still transport fifth graders who were in that program from Strong, or from Lyman if we ended up going with that alternative, like we're doing now.
Actually, a lot closer to.
Right, yeah. And to that point, that would have been problematic if we'd stayed on the high school schedule. But by moving to Memorial schedule, it mirrors what currently happens with fourth and fifth graders. And you're right, they'd be a little bit closer.
Any other questions? Linda or Jason?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Tina's not here. She's being, the guest of honor at an Italian community service event tonight. All right. And we will pick this up on Wednesday, for discussion and vote, possible vote on Wednesday. With that, we'll move on to 4. I'll start with in-person public comment. If you could come up and give your name and town. Is that on? Is that on?
Okay. So my name is Kate Checo, as many of you know. If you don't know, listening from home, I'm a lifelong townie. So is my husband. I'm a graduate of Coggintog. I'm an educator. I have a 3rd grade student. And which is why I've been very involved in this process. You're probably sick of hearing me. I have been emailing, I have been here. And that is primarily why I've been involved in this process. I wasn't going to speak tonight for that reason. I feel like I've said what I needed to say. However, when the Strong School Plan was proposed tonight, my other child will now be affected directly because she is a 5th grade student who will be a 6th grader. And I just feel like I need to remind everyone that the 5th grade students have not been to Strong. The Green Team Wing, what it used to be called back in the day, was designed for the 6th graders for a reason. And while I understand I have a young son coming up the way, while I understand that the 5th grade is primarily being focused on, it is being hyper focused on And we are now losing sight of these other group of kids who are also going to Strong for the first time. They have not been to middle school. They have never been there before. They have been waiting for this experience too. And now they will be in a different part of the building. They are, from what I can guess, not having lockers. There sounds like some science is being taken away. The crowd has mentioned class size, like, what are we doing? We're passing the buck. Okay, let's appease the fifth grade. Let's put them up in the hallway. Let's do as best we can. And now in turn, these sixth grade students are having a less than experience. I did take notes and I lost my train of thought. But I just think that really looking at some of the other options in depth, I really encourage that to happen because Strong can function as it is. It doesn't need to be affected at all. I feel like we're just making things work when it can be just left alone.
I'm Katie Reddick, resident of Durham. I also have a rising sixth grader for next year. And I want to remind us that we didn't think of sixth graders as going to Strong 5 years ago. That's still new in our district. And when that happened, our sixth graders lost recess and they lost the experiences of being in elementary school. And I say, if we're going to bring fifth graders up, why can't we give sixth graders recess too? Why can't we give them the experiences that they had 5 years ago when they were still at the elementary school? I also want us to think about clubs and recesses, making sure they have recesses as well. And like making sure that their experience, that they're not assuming that they already know the building or they already know how to be middle schooler. They're going to need that experience all over again too. So let's make sure we're being really thoughtful about how that happens. We're not in the middle of a pandemic. We can plan ahead. We've been talking about this for over a year now. So let's make sure we're doing it right.
Hi, my name's Emma Quick. I'm just gonna kind of echo, I'm sorry, I'm from Durham. I know you've all seen me a million times. I'm just gonna kind of echo what Katie said. I was not going to speak tonight as well. I just want to comment on the fact that every single time you show us a model, you have the numbers wrong. You keep showing us different amount of numbers. When we went to the meeting, the community conversation the other day, there were 5 sixth grade classrooms still on your photo, and there are now 4. Which puts you at 26 students per classroom with the numbers now. So that means if no one else moves into district in 6th grade, we're already above our maximum class size numbers for 6th grade. And again, these 5th graders, I have a 5th grader. I also have a 2nd grader. So my kids are hitting both ends of this. These kids haven't been there. They haven't switched classes at all yet because they made that change without notifying parents this year. So they're also going to be getting used to that. And to cram them into 26 kids in a class is just absurd. The second thing I just want to mention is that as we discussed again at the community conversation, refurbishing portables is absurd. Those portables are disgusting. They can't even be used now. There are multiple portable companies. I spoke myself to Box, who has a representative in Clinton, who said they build these all the time. They just built one in Cheshire. They just built one in Simsbury. They're working with Glastonbury. They do not need to be single or double classrooms. They can be full-size buildings with bathrooms, with hallways. I want to know how you're going to de-escalate kids without a hallway. Our classrooms are cleared regularly for behavioral issues or, situations. Where is that going to happen if they're in just a portable with no bathrooms? Second thing I want to mention is that she told me that it is code apparently for kindergarten through or pre-K through 3rd grade classrooms that are in portables to have a bathroom in each classroom. It's not code above 4th. So that's why you're trying to shove 4th and 5th into portables because you don't have to put a bathroom out there. You want to shove costs down our throat, but you're lying to us with every breath. There are currently 6 6th grade classrooms, you're showing us 4. There are currently 6 2nd grade classrooms and you're showing us 5. So just look at the numbers. Every time you've shown them to us, they're different. So please get them right before you put them on a slide. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Lauren Hall. I live in Durham. I also was hoping not to have to speak this evening, since you've heard from me quite a bit as well. The sixth grade piece, we've had parents speaking up on behalf of the 4 and 5. And I think it is imperative that we all continue to speak for all of our children. And the points that these moms echoed, I just want to echo them that our phones are blowing up. People at home are floored. We're talking a lot about plans, contingency, data for finances. What about our student data? And have we looked at how this is going to impact intervention? So when we're looking at spaces, and here's an intervention room, but you're adding over 100 students to these spaces, are you adding space and time for interventions when we already have significant concerns with our student performance data? So where you're servicing students, the amount of space you have, the quality of an educational experience in that space when they're crowded in. And there's a lot of research about ages and spaces and transitions. So that comment earlier was concerning to most of the spaces educators or therapists. Sorry, trying to keep it brief. That's really not my strength. And so that's something that we would like answers to before you take a vote on Wednesday, because clearly this was very orchestrated, that you already had your questions and your answers ready for one another. We are all paying attention. So we would like these things addressed and answered. Yes. Oh, wow. I heard that. Thanks, Liz. We would like these answered before you vote, because if these are concerns we're making publicly, it should not be a surprise later when we don't have a plan for these things. And also, it was not addressed here. We were very, very loud at the conversations meeting that we don't want to lose staff or administrators. And nowhere do we hear what this shakes out in terms of how that for our administrators. So also our administrators don't just handle the day-to-day. So when you look at numbers in buildings, they chair meetings, they sit in on intervention meetings, they support parents, they support staff, they're doing T-eval. So when you're adding 100 students and you're decreasing admin or thinking about that, that impacts your staff, but that also, again, impacts your behavior and your performance data. And who's responding to those crises? When you have to clear a space, who's supporting those teachers? And if you don't have the space and the staff, this is all leading to the wrong direction of where we need to be going to supporting students. So when you're looking at data and timelines, we need to look at all of the data, not just the numbers for building. Thank you.
My name is Courtney Costa. I'm a resident of Durham. So just to start off, you started off with all of the individual plans and benefits and challenges of each of them. You left off a ridiculous amount of the benefits and challenges that we listed when we suggested them. And so I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, because we also went through when we suggested them and acknowledged the benefits and challenges. And you didn't acknowledge the majority of those that we acknowledged, which I think is really important. One of those being that we acknowledge the amount of money that's going to be spent on the project outside of Memorial, right? There's going to be costs in all of these transitions. And one of the things that we're trying to suggest is the money you're putting in should benefit the district long-term. So why are we putting so much money into portables that are then going away? If we're going to put money back in, great if we're going to enhance a science room, but if it's going to not be a science room when we're done, we wasted all that money. If we're putting up a temporary room, a temporary wall in a hallway for a temporary fix, then we have to tear it down. All the money's wasted. If we're putting up, again, yes, the divider in the gym, great. That's a long-term fix, but all these other things are temporary solutions. That's money we're wasting, we're throwing away. So when we're looking at these solutions, let's look at ways we can enhance the district long-term, because the majority of these solutions, I don't think are doing that at all. And I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. Let's look, if we have to look at finances, which obviously we do, let's look at that in a way for long-term gains, because I don't think that's being considered over the fix for right now. And I think that is an important piece. Second, I hear the comparisons of, what other school districts have out there in 5/8s and K/8s. Those districts designed their schools specifically to be 5/8s and K/8s. That's not what we're doing. We're doing a temporary fix. So those comparisons are completely irrelevant. The data they're sharing is completely invalid. That comparison to what we're doing, we're not going to find data to prove or disprove what we're doing, because the situation is very unique. So I think trying to prove their successes that's garbage data for us. I don't think that's relevant to look at all. I think one of the biggest things that we're missing though, in all of the struggles and all of the solutions you're telling us with Strong, is that we are adding 103 or 106 kids into an underperforming school. Strong is the weakest link in the district. They are underperforming every school in the district in all 6 of the categories on the Connecticut report card. We have to call a spade a spade. They're underperforming in every category. So now we're going to put them in there with less resources, both in human beings and in physical space, in the right materials in a science classroom, and the right materials in an art classroom. They're probably going to have less tutors and maybe less administrators and less teachers, bigger class sizes. That is not a solution that is student-centered. And so if your mission and vision is about students, that is not a solution that should even be on the table anymore. If we're putting students first, we are not putting students in the lowest performing school in our district. I can tell you, I have a child that's in Strong now. He has a 504. It is the most basic 504 you have ever seen in your entire life. I would argue that every strategy on that 504 is just good teaching. I can't tell you how many meetings I had to have just to get his 504 followed. I had to tell him, you go into school and say, remember, I have that legal document that says you have to do that for me. And it's just good teaching strategies. We can't be adding more students into a school that's acting that way. That's not student-centered.
Hi, I'm Jill Silverman, also a lifelong resident of Durham, and didn't want to have to get up tonight, but I just want to take a second to thank our administration first of all, because I know that this is very difficult and we haven't involved you like we should have from the beginning. And so we do appreciate that, I think, as parents, because we've been asking for what our teachers and what our administration think, because we do put our trust in all of you. But I do want to echo just what Courtney was saying about buildings that are built for 5th through 8th or 4th through 8th is totally different than what we're looking at here. So as Lauren was saying about our interventions and special ed, are these buildings really ready to take on 103 or 106 students with the need for intervention and special ed? And I think that we need to think about that. And I think what the takeaway that I'm getting over the last month is that we cannot rush this decision. We cannot rush this. This is something that's parents are saying. I mean, I have 4th graders who are going to be 5th graders. So, and those are my only 2. So it's only affecting me once. But these parents who have kids that are 2nd graders that are going to be 6th graders, we need to think of everybody. And I don't think we're doing that. And I think it just means we need the time to do that and have these conversations and have these meetings before we make these rush decisions again. That I think that we did when we moved the 3rd graders to Memorial. We moved the 6th graders to Strong. I don't think either of those moves were necessary. It was because Lyman was closing. Lyman still is open. And I think that we could have waited and made those decisions, and we should be just discussing building a K through 5. And unfortunately, we're in a spot right now that I don't want to make that same mistake again. There's a lot of our children who've been affected by these decisions that were not really necessary in that time frame. Eventually, maybe, but I think we need to take the time to make this the right decision. But I do think administration deeply.
I'm Jill Griffin. I'm also a lifelong resident of Durham. For those of you who know me, I grew up in this town with my mother leading this town for many, many years. And so I just want to say that I appreciate the timeline of the budget and the grant and the spending and having to make this decision so that costs don't go up. But it's very clear that that is kind of the driving force behind all of this. I'm really concerned about our student performance as a whole in this district, and to see our performance rates drop in the way that we're ranking in the state right now should be more of a conversation here tonight. I'm also really concerned about my son going into Lyman. We've been talking about closing that school for years. I didn't hear anything about the state of that school, the disrepair that that school's in, how it's gonna handle more students. The portables that we talked about being refurbished, I don't trust the safety and the health of that school to take on 100 more students for how many years, if we stay on track with this building project. So I think that is also another reason to pause this and really take a look at, is this a feasible plan? Because if some catastrophic event happens, which we have talked about in previous Board of Ed meetings, where are those students going? That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother catastrophic plan that we don't have a backup plan for. So that's a huge concern for me, for my first grader going into second grade and being there for 3 potential years. And I didn't hear that asked or mentioned once tonight. So I appreciate the budget and the concerns and the numbers and all of that. There's not a number that I'm going to place on my child's health, number one, and their education, number two. And so to throw those costs in all of our face, we're not hearing it. We moved to this town and we moved back to this town for the education system for our children. And so that's why we're involved. That's why we're here. And I just want that to be the priority and put the numbers aside.
Any more in-person public comment? With that, I'll move to the, if anyone does, in the meantime, after that, you come back. If you can raise your hand or online public comment. I see a lot of people online, but I don't see any hands raised.
How many are-
27. There was a hand. Under iPhone. If you could unmute whoever's under iPhone. As the mic is on mute, if you could unmute your mic. 'Ru, can you just unmute that mic by any chance? I don't know if they're having a hard time with it.
Just trying to unmute.
I can't believe it. You don't allow her to.
No, Courtney says whoever does is trying to unmute. Yeah. So they have the ability to unmute now, right? Ru?
Yeah, *6 to unmute.
Oh, do you have it as a, webinar or? If it's a web option, yeah, they're saying they don't have an option, so if it's a webinar, there's no option.
Can they do *6, he said?
Uh-oh. See if we can figure that one out. I'm gonna go to Amanda Giganti.
She also said there's no audio.
Yeah, there's lots of people at home messaging and they are trying to come in.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Amanda.
Somebody.
Yep.
Hi, so somebody just gave me access to unmute. That's how I was able to do it. There is no button. It said the host was allowing me access to unmute. Sorry, this whole unmute thing got me a little discombobulated. Okay, let me try to think what I was gonna say. The number one thing, going back to what Emma said, Emma Quick, was the class sizes. Hearing that the current 6 classes of first graders being made into bigger class sizes to make one less classroom So the current first graders becoming 5 classes of second graders, making more students per class. And the second grade class is deeply disturbing, and I don't even have a child in that grade. Furthermore, the same thing happening to the 6th grade, class size is getting bigger. I understand that students are going to be in related arts, but ultimately class sizes will get bigger. And if we're really trying to service all of our kids and do the best for our kids, having such large class sizes, there's no way that we can meet the needs of every child with such large classes. Even in the inner cities, class sizes are not that big. Having taught in an inner city myself. So that is very alarming and not acceptable, in my opinion.
The one who's under iPhone. Are they able to unmute? It says talking permitted, same as Amanda's. Drew, do you want me to try to promote that one to a panelist and then we can bring it back? Will that help? If they're having issues on that end, or?
I just asked them to unmute. I'm wondering if that pushes out the ability to talk. You can promote them though.
Oh, one more thing I forgot. So since I can talk again, band. I don't see band on the current Miss Gonzalez's current plan for Strong. I don't know if there is a location for band for next year. Sorry.
Promoting iPhone the panelist.
Well, while we're waiting on that one, does anyone else in person? I think that's working. It might be a settings issue.
Can they just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can they just call someone here in the audience and then put them on speaker by the?
I don't know who it is.
I don't know who it is either. If they know who it is, they can call someone and then you could just put them speaker by the microphone. So they can.
Is there a chat feature like this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's try that.
I have one question. I know you can't answer, but then you could be on the agenda for today. Dr. Shook, you said you met with the first selectman last week. When did you meet with him, may I ask?
Are we doing Q&A from the audience now?
You can give, if you want to give it now, or you can give it then, doesn't matter.
Check
I know
my
we're,
calendar.
I know we're just waiting, so if we could give Lauren an answer. Okay.
We're just waiting for them to see if they're calling.
He and I met. December 4th.
Thank you. I'm interested. Okay, thank you.
Can I please have a Because I talked to Brendan today and he did verify the conversation to me. He gave me all the information that the two of them had.
Oh, I
spoken.
believe it. He just had emailed us
Okay.
after the, towards full transparency, right? Because all of the parent squares. have said
Yeah,
full
because I was curious
transparency.
myself. Yeah.
As a group, clearly we are working together because we are transparent with one another. So the Board of Ed, someone from the Board of Ed responded to us as parents that Warren had been told by the first selectman, what was the phrase was, what was the phrase? Told that he said that it was not an option and that he was unwilling to collaborate in terms of using corn. So I responded back and said, just for clarification purposes, what questions were asked to, so we're all on the same page. And he said, as of this date, I have not yet even been contacted by the Board of Ed, and that was on Wednesday. So we had already received a correspondence saying that it was non-negotiable and not up for discussion, responded back and said he had yet to be, he'd heard from Amanda Giganti, but had not heard from the Board of Ed. So that's where that question's coming from, and that was not hearsay, it was just.
And I said, he's not here to speak for himself, but I did have a nice conversation with him today, and he actually told me that he's been misquoted. So I don't know if that may be a misquote, but I can tell you that he did say that he has spoken to the superintendent, that he is willing to work with with the decision, if that was the decision, but that he by no means felt it was feasible whatsoever. And he gave me several reasons why, because I wondered the same thing.
And I appreciate that, because
Okay.
we saw all of his correspondence in writing, so there is a contradiction as well, so
Yeah.
we would like to follow up with him as well, so that's why anyone who knows me in real life outside of these meetings, I am probably one of the most transparent people you have ever met, like I'll say it to your face. I'll hug you, I'll thank you, but I'm not gonna talk behind anybody's back, it's not what I'm here for, I don't think it moves us anywhere, so that's why I'm unapologetically myself. And well, maybe I apologize a lot. Okay.
Katie has her hand raised. Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to just echo the sentiments of some of the people who have already spoken. I grew up here in town, and this is a place that I moved back to so that my kids would have great access to the education that I also had growing up here. And to hear that the sixth graders, as Katie Checo said earlier, are going to now also be affected because of the fifth graders moving over there is really just disheartening to hear. And I really was hoping, I've heard a lot of unfortunate things about Strong School and the scores coming out of that building. And to now hear, that potentially you're also setting up the sixth graders to not have a great transition over there is really upsetting to hear. So I really hope that as we plan this moving forward, you think about the things that people have said, such as the fact that they're still kids as well. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to let them mimic more of a fifth grade schedule and be able to have some recess time, and think about how we can make it more manageable for them as well if we're going to have fifth graders there, if that seems to be the way things are going. I also want to say that as a parent of a student who receives special education, that we need to really think about how that's going to look in all of the buildings and what we're going to do with staffing and making sure there's enough staff available in all areas of special education in terms of ABA and behavior techs and all of the things that we need to have available to students. PT, OT, where are they going to all be able to fit into this plan and have the room available for that? Because I feel like even right now at some of the buildings, that's really, people are sharing rooms. It's just not ideal already. And to put more people in more rooms, it's just something that I feel like is easily said, oh, let's just push everyone together. It's okay if we put all these people in one room. But you don't think about the things that kids need privacy at times. And as somebody said earlier, with putting the fourth graders in portables, letting kids have privacy if they're in the middle of a meltdown, or if they need some time to cool down, or they need a private space to be able to take a break. Those are things that we need to continue to think about all students, not just the majority of students. Thank you.
phone is trying again.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm not Zoom savvy, so I just think it's really sad, and I just want to reiterate everything that's going on in the chat, that's going on Facebook, that a lot of the parents just feel this is, you know, you guys going through the motions of appeasing us and going through these meetings, and the decision is already made, where we have, you know, my son comes home and excuse me?
Sorry, could you give us your name?
Michelle? My son comes home and he's already concerned about being on the bus with the bigger kids. I know that's been discussed. It hasn't been brought up until tonight. And it's like sounded a lot like you guys were circling around that and the playground and just random conversation that wasn't really answering any of the questions that were being presented to you guys. And it's just really defeating as parents and as a community to know that. And it feels like you guys have already made this decision, and knowing that the decision is going to be in a couple days right after this and no time to digest our comments is really frustrating as a community. I think if we were able to bring our children in and let you hear how their concerns, it might be more empowering.
I'm sorry, last name, Michelle?
Liss, Liss.
Thank you.
I have a 4th grader and a 5th grade, kindergartner. So they're all affected by this. My daughter's entire elementary career is affected by this decision for this future school.
Nancy again?
I'm back. Okay, one last thing I was thinking about was another option if we were given more time to digest this. Like, could we put if the community center is not an option, could we put portables at the community center? There's a playground right there. There's a gym in the building. Like, we could still use part of it. So we're just more time for more options. The decision does not have to be made in a day or two. There's so many different ideas that could be presented that we probably haven't even thought of yet, that could be explored and possibly done if given more time. We've got a lot of minds here, a lot of moms and dads who have great ideas that really could be utilized if given time. Thanks. I won't talk again, I promise.
Elise?
It's actually her husband, Nate Kirshner. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I just want to echo, I guess for one, I graduated from Coggins as well. I guess I'll point out, I did the Rooster Corn Memorial Strong Coggins 5 transition program. Never had a problem with it. It seems like a lot of the conversations tonight have been about concerns related to the transitions. I did them all. I didn't have a problem doing any of them. I think several of the other people who spoke tonight did the same thing, would probably echo my opinion on things. I'd also like to point out that I have a civil engineering background and do construction. And when they talk about the additional cost of delaying the project, I guess on one hand, I'm saying that's not a given. We don't know what the economy is going to do. Actually, I was just on a forum talking about the cost of construction with the projected next 3 to 5 years. So that's really speculation at this point. And I'll go toe to toe. I've done some of the biggest private sector projects and some of the biggest public sector projects in this state. So I'll be happy to talk construction costs with anybody who wants to talk about them. The other thing that I want to note is, I guess it's a 2-part response. The comparison was made to Hartford schools. If we're going to compare to Hartford schools, then I'm packing up, putting my kids in private school. I didn't move back here to pay the taxes here to be compared to a Hartford school. Now, I know we compared to other school districts, but that's unacceptable. And $4 million over the course of how large a project is this estimated to be? It wasn't rhetorical. I was asking someone to give me a response. What are we projecting the cost of this project to be?
77 billion.
Okay, so that's less than 10% of the cost. Now, I would argue that any project is going to have inflation, it's going to have change orders, it's going to have additional costs. And I think I might be misquoting the $4 million number, but there was a specific number that the superintendent referenced with respect to delay. I would say the money's well spent to appease the parents and the students of the community. I think going off half-cocked is going to cost more in change orders. It's going to cost more in construction delays, and it's going to be, a detriment to the students, which no one lives in this town for low taxes and a poor education. So that's all I have to say about it. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I really do hope people do pause. I know at the last meeting, there was a discussion about pausing this to make a better decision. I don't feel that that's happened.
Thanks. Steve. Is there any other public comment that's in person or online?
I don't have too much to say, but just to echo everything that everybody has said here. My name's Nikki Dorenzo, Nikki Dorenzo. I'm a lifelong resident. I, as well as many folks here, went to Brewster, went to Corn, went to Memorial, went to Strong, went to Cognizant, graduated and stayed here. I have raised two older kids that have gone through the system. One is about to exit, one has exited, and I have twins in second grade. So it is impacting everybody. I was very hopeful at the last meeting that we were heard about really putting a pause on this and doing what's best in interest of the kids. I haven't heard anything here tonight that's interest of the kids. I have to be honest, this is just about numbers and money, and like Nate said so eloquently, it all changes. It's all relevant. I worked in the nonprofit sector for my entire career. Bonds change, numbers change, things change. But our kids, our education of our kids, we're here for that. And I don't feel that anybody's looking at that. We're worried about costs and this, and yes, I get it. All of those things factor into play. I totally get it. But I don't feel, from what I've heard from everybody here, that there's enough information to move forward and make this decision. Let's squeeze kids in here. Let's put kids there. We voted for a K-5 school. So who cares only about, the next couple of years, those kids that are in fifth grade are going to go into not a K-5 school. It's just a transition for them. We talk a lot about the transition, but I wasn't affected by the transition of going to multiple schools through my entire career. I went off to college. I had a great career. I have a wonderful family, and I live here in town. And I think I turned out okay. But I think that we're more worried about the transition and this. My kids transitioned abruptly from Brewster to Lyman. It went okay, right? It's about how we structure it for them. I wasn't thrilled about it, but it was abrupt and it happened and they transitioned, and then they'll transition again and they'll transition again, and that's part of life. But having a solid plan and putting it into place is more important, making sure that all the resources are there, making sure the class sizes are appropriate, making sure the education is appropriate, that the teachers are listened to. I mean, I think I haven't heard a lot of that tonight. I've heard about field trips and playgrounds, and yeah, those are all important, but that's not really the core piece of this. So I just hope that, we don't rush this, that we look at real hard numbers, we look at real hard stats, and we think about our kids. Because I don't hear a lot about the kids. That's just my 2 cents, but thank you.
Any more online public comment? With that, anyone got a lot to think about for now and Wednesday? We'll move on and I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. Bob? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you all for coming.